Welcome in, everybody. It is week 11, and it is time for our weekly start and sit episode. We finally got Donte back on board this week. We are ready to go. All four of us are locked and loaded. So let's get underway. Let's not delay the fun anymore. So without further ado, Kyle, go ahead, take it away. Who is your start of the week?
My start of the week is Damien Harris, the running back for the New England Patriots, and they face the Houston Texans this week, who have given up the second most points for fantasy to running backs. And last week they just got demolished by both Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. And Damien Harris saw a huge majority of New England's touches last week, 22 carries, while the next guy had 10 touches. Damian Harris, this is his backfield. They love him. They're going to use him, and he's going to destroy against Houston.
Yeah, while I agree that he is taking that lead role, I can't say that the backfield is necessarily his entirely. This is the first week that he's had over 50% in snap shares. Previous weeks, it's been 35%, 30%. And you never know in terms of where the game's going to go. They could use Rex Burkhead for like passing situations and whatnot. One of the things that does, highlight, looking at his stats right now is, he's only scored once throughout him producing in the backfield so far. So that's something to keep an eye on. This week could be the week where it happens, given the fact that, as you said, Kyle, Green Bay is woeful in terms of their defensive front. But yeah, I agree. I think the way the Patriots are running that offense, it's going to be Damien Harris. He's going to be able to feast if he wants to. And he's just watching him play. He's a Rough Rider back, man. He'll fight for those extra yards, and that's something that I can tell Belichick loves to see. So yeah, I can ride with Damien Harris on this week.
Absolutely. That's a good pick, Kyle. And I just want to make one clarification. I think Donte had a slip of the mind there and said Green Bay's front, and I think he intended to say Houston.
Houston.
Yeah, that's okay. I think you're telling the future a little bit on another pick coming up. So, but we'll move on. We'll get there eventually. So let's go ahead. Mike, take it away. Who do you have?
My start of the week this week, I have Michael Pittman Jr. So it's kind of been a whirlwind of who is producing in that Indianapolis offense, even the running backs. At this point, you don't know who's going to be producing in that offense, and it's kind of hard to pick and choose who is. But the hot-handed Indy right now is Michael Pittman Jr. The last 2 weeks, he's had 7 targets and 8 targets, 56 yards and 101 yards last week, which was a career high for him. So I just think that him and Rivers are really getting that connection down. I think that he's the guy from here on out. I'm expecting Jair Alexander, if he does play, because he didn't play last week, if he does play, he should be on T.Y. Hilton, and that should open up a lot of things for Michael Pittman Jr., who is right now Philip Rivers' favorite target.
Yeah, I am in love with Pittman. I picked him up in a bunch of leagues. I got him before the Thursday night blow-up, and I'm so happy to have him. I think he is, moving forward, probably Rivers' favorite guy. And I think it's the year of the rookie receiver, and this is Pittman's time to shine. He's finally breaking out, and I think he will continue to have great games, especially against Green Bay, if Jair is against T.Y.
Yeah, Kyle, with you saying it's the year of the rookie receiver, this is our second year in a row, actually, and you think last year we had guys like Terry McLaurin and DK Metcalf put up huge seasons, AJ Brown even. It really, there's been such a stink on rookie receivers for such a long time. It really makes you think maybe the tide is starting to switch and we're starting to go in a different direction where rookies are actually ready coming out of college and are ready to adapt to professional playbook. So, but Pittman's a great pick. I really, really like that pick as well. So I'm going to continue on. I actually also have another wide receiver. I have Juju Smith-Schuster as my start of the week. He has been on the upswing lately. That is not a secret at all. He's been putting up some very, very solid fantasy performances, especially as of late. He's actually put up in the last 4 weeks, he's put up a week of 17, 13, 21, and 22 points. which is definitely more than sufficient for your fantasy lineup. That even puts him somewhere within for a couple of those weeks in the wide receiver 1 range, which is great because you didn't take him as a wide receiver 1. You took him as maybe your 2 or your 3. So I love that value that he's getting there. On top of that, they play a very, very weak Jaguars team that actually allowed 325 passing yards to kind of what I deem to be a similar Packers passing offense, just in terms of the weapons that they present there. And Marquez Valdez-Scantling had a huge week last week. Obviously, one of them was on a long breakaway touchdown, but even Devontae Adams managed to see 8 receptions, and Tanyan and some of the guys out of the backfield saw high reception counts also. So it's no joke that the Steelers can throw the ball all over this Jaguars defense, and that's what I'm looking for this week. So Juju is my start of the week.
Yep. I mean, about 4 or 5 weeks ago on Twitter, I kind of saw the same thing that you just talked about. I saw a similar trend in Juju just finding ways to get open. And the more that you watch the Steelers team, the more I see that when Juju is catching these balls now with a bunch of receivers around him, he really has space around him. He's not really having to do the contested catches like that he was forced to do last year as the number 1. When he's catching the ball, he's wide open on drag routes, corner routes, digs. He has space now. And last week, 13 targets, which is absolutely phenomenal. So what I saw about 4 or 5 weeks ago is a trend that if Claypool, Deontay, and Juju are all healthy, Juju's going to produce. He's going to be a wide receiver 1, like you just mentioned. So I think as long as Deontay is on that field and healthy, Juju will strive. And like you said, they play a Jacksonville team this week who is top 10 in points, or top 10 in giving up points to receivers. So Juju's definitely a must start this week.
Yeah, those are some great points about the injuries and how they can play into Juju being a viable option. That was something I hadn't considered, so that's a great point there. Okay, and Donte, who was your start of the week?
So I'm going to go with Jakobi Meyers. He's going against the Texans this week, who are ranked 21st in giving up points to receivers. One thing that stands out to me just in any fantasy outlook is snap share, because the more you're on the field, the more opportunities you have, obviously. The past 3 weeks, he has had, starting with Buffalo, he had 99%, 99% against the Jets, and 98% against Baltimore. So the man's on the field all the time. Obviously, against the Jets, Cam, he had his best breakout year, 14 targets, 12 catches, 169 yards. And Belichick's using him in the offense a little bit more. He's a little trickster when he implements new people in the offense. You saw as he threw that touchdown pass to Burkhead towards the Ravens. So I think he's not going to leave the field again, number 1. And number 2, he's going to be utilized in different ways that gives him production in terms of fantasy. And that's why I'm going to start him.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I quite honestly, I didn't realize that he had been on the field as much as he has been. He essentially, with those 99, 99, and 98% snap counts, he's coming off for one play, and that's a breather here and there. And it's pretty remarkable even then, because that's not very many breathers throughout the game. And something that our viewers may not be aware of, I personally am a football coach myself, and we live, myself and the rest of our staff, we live by the mantra where you got to get your dudes the ball. And it seems like Jakobi Meyers is becoming that dude for Bill Belichick in this offense, kind of in the similar way that a couple years ago Julian Edelman was, where, we saw him taking jet sweeps and throwing the ball down the field or a swing pass back to Tom Brady, whatever it was. But that seems kind of like what Jakobi Meyers is evolving into at this point. And as only a second-year player in the league, it's kind of exciting to think where he could go. Cam seems to have experimented with going to N'Keal Harry early in the season, or Julian Edelman, and he's jumped around, bounced around. Even Demir Bird had a couple weeks there where he looked like maybe he was the one. But I think we can rest easy knowing that Jakobi Meyers is going to be the go-to here. And against a Houston defense that's not really anything to be scared of. I think that Jakobi Meyers is a great start this week. So nice pick there, Donte. Okay, so we got through our 4 starts. Once again we have Kyle. Kyle, who picked Damien Harris. Mike went with Michael Pittman. I went with Juju Smith-Schuster, and Donte went with Jakobi Meyers. So now let's go ahead. Let's get into the sits of the week. These are the guys that we're not favoring as much as maybe some of those other guys. So in order to get us started, Kyle, take us away.
I am sitting Darrell Henderson, the running back for the LA Rams, because he has not been great. And they just lost their left tackle, Andrew Whitworth.
Mm-hmm.
That, and they face the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are the second best rush defense for fantasy points. It's just a perfect storm for Henderson to not have a very good week. And we've seen Cam Akers and Malcolm Brown starting to just take up more carries and more touches in this backfield. And it's just become a full 3-headed back, and you don't know who's getting the ball and what they're going to do with it in this backfield. So I'm just staying away.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Kyle. I'm a Darrell Henderson owner in a couple different leagues. And I actually have Malcolm Brown in a couple different leagues, and I'm like ripping my hair out because I'll start one week and the other one will go off, and vice versa. It's just a pain in the butt situation a little bit. And like you said, against this Tampa Bay front, I've kind of rationalized them in a point where I'm not starting. If I can, I'm not starting anyone against them, with the exception of maybe Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, a couple guys like that. But even when you get to the tier of like Ezekiel Elliott and maybe like an Aaron Jones, like against that Tampa Bay front, I'm not sure that I would start those guys, despite the fact that they're absolute studs. So this front scares me off a lot, and then a 3-headed monster, especially with what the Rams have. I think I'm just fading all 3 of the running backs this week, and not even playing that guessing game in the first place. So I love the sit. Mike, who is your sit of the week?
So I'm going with Travis Fulgham this week. It's going to be my sit of the week. Last week, Fulgham saw on his so-called hot streak, as when he joined the Eagles, and he's been blowing up lately. He's been their number one. He saw a season-low 5 targets with the team and only 1 catch. And I try to break it down as much as I could with the info that I had. And one thing I saw was that Bradbury from the Giants was on him all week. And that makes sense. Bradbury is one of the best corners in the league. He's been shutting down receivers all year, so it makes a ton of sense. But besides that, I know that offense is struggling like a lot lately. One of the worst offenses in the league. As we all know, they just signed recently today. They brought in Jordan Howard again, who was on the team a few years back, and they re-signed him. So, I don't know what's going on with that team. They're obviously struggling offensively. But then I looked at the targets last week. Now, Miles Sanders had 5 targets. Goddard had 6. Greg Ward had 6. Rager had 7. And even Richard Rodgers had 5 targets. So Wentz throwing the ball 37 times against not so great of a Giants defense. And I can hear the argument that they're decent, but not so great. I mean, that's a little bit concerning for me. I think that it was just Fulgham who stepped up when everybody else was gone, and really the only guys that came back are really Goddard and Rager, but I'm starting to see the tides turn towards Rager now. So they're going up against a Browns defense that is definitely better than the Giants defense, and that pass rush is insane this week. So I'm looking at Wentz hitting a lot of hot routes this week, favoring the tight ends as much as possible. So I expect the Fulgham hot streak that it kind of went down last week, I expect it to fully end this week.
Yeah, I saw the stat where Fulgham's target share from the past 5 weeks were 36%, 26, 26, 26%, and then last week it was 13%. And that is insanely low. And I just kind of chalk it up to Wentz having his favorite guy in Goddard back. Yeah, Rager's kind of getting fully integrated into this offense again. But Fulgham, he's just kind of disappearing. But against this Cleveland defense, it's kind of hard to say the upside isn't there, because it is there. This Cleveland defense against receivers, it's bad. But it's kind of like, if he doesn't perform well against Cleveland this week, do we even what do we think about Fulgham in 2 weeks against Seattle? But But if I'm comfortable sitting him this week, but the upside is there, and it's a toss up for Fulgham. It's really up to Wentz. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so for myself, my sit of the week is actually going to be AJ Brown, and that is a little bit tricky because I am a very, very big AJ Brown supporter. I think he's been outstanding this season, especially in the time that he's been back after his injury. But that's kind of why I'm fading him a little bit this week, is because that injury seems to be nagging him again. He was questionable and sat out of practice today. Today being Thursday, with a knee injury. And that really kind of just worries me a little bit. I'm not sure that he's going to be a full go. Last week we saw him only reel in one catch for 21 yards, which is very, very uncharacteristic of him, especially given that it was a little lower. It was a 75% snap count when he's usually somewhere in the 80s or 90s. So I just think that he's ailing a little bit, and he has to get back to full health. And especially against a Ravens defense that's going to terrorize him all day long, between Marcus Peters, between Marlon Humphrey, whoever he draws, it's not going to be a fun matchup. And it's also, I think in the forecast, it's looking like there's going to be a little bit of rain coming down, and that's just not great for the legs or the knee injuries either. So all of those things kind of just factor into my mind a little bit, and it kind of tells me that it's going to be a ground and pound type game against that Ravens defense, and they're going to feed Henry and not necessarily go through the air as much. So I'm fading AJ Brown this week.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you hit all points really. I was going to say against Baltimore last week when they faced the Patriots, it was clear that, I mean, Damien Harris, we talk about him again, but he was demolishing that front line for the Ravens. Obviously, it was in the middle of a monsoon for the most part, but if it's looking like it's going to be the same thing this week, then, if there's anyone that's better at fighting for those extra yards, it's going to be Derrick Henry. I mean, he's already hard enough to tackle as is, so the game plan, seems simple from our standpoint, at least, that they're going to feed him the rock as much as possible. That could potentially influence some possibilities for AJ Brown to get a look or two, maybe make a big play, just based on the fact that, on the defensive side, they're going to probably scheme around the fact that, hey, we just got demolished by Damien Harris. They're going to think that Derrick Henry is going to do even better. So they could load up the box and potentially lead for something, for AJ Brown to, make a play on that side. But besides that, you hit on all points. I really don't think, and the injury is just the icing on the cake in terms of maybe sitting him this week. So, yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, it's a great point about adjusting the game plan. I think that's a big key factor too, especially, Damien Harris, Derrick Henry. If one tore you up, then the other one it's going to be scary. So, okay. And last but not least, actually, Donte, we're going to stick with you. Who's your sit of the week?
So I'm going to go with Jonathan Taylor. I know it's probably a questionable pick, just because Green Bay is one of the worst defenses in terms of giving up points to running backs. But my reasoning for it is just based on reliability. The coaching staff, it's clear that they're not really giving him the full shares that he should be having at this point towards the season. Even looking at his snap shares, and I go back to that because that's the number one thing for me. He had 59% in week 6 against Cincinnati, and then each week after that, it's declined. It was 33%, 31%, and then last week it was 24%. He only had 7 carries for 12 yards. Yeah, that's awful. Yard per carry at that point. But Nyheim Hines, it's so that backfield just in general, you never know who's going to pop off. Of course, it's Green Bay, so they could potentially just start running the ball more because their defense is so horrid. But at least on that side, in terms of running the ball. But yeah, I'm just, in terms of, I'm a betting man. I just don't think it's a good spot for Jonathan Taylor this week, at least.
Right, and I could definitely agree with you that what's going on there is beyond understanding because you don't know who is going to get the ball every week. You don't know who is going to perform. What I've seen, and from doing a little bit of research, I've seen that Jonathan Taylor has taken the first snap of every football game. So what that says to me is that he's their guy. He's going to be their guy for the rest of the year, and it's his job to lose. Now, in the games that Nyheim Hines, other than week one, because week one he was a rookie, you're just getting accustomed. Other than week one, the games that Nyheim Hines and Wilkins have outperformed him are the games that he started the game and either lost fumbles, missed holes, missed blocking assignments. It's his job that he's losing. So I wouldn't sit Jonathan Taylor this week just based off the matchup because Green Bay does give up the most points to fantasy running backs, and it's by a lot. So for that matchup alone, I wouldn't sit him this week. I still think it's his job to lose this week, and it's going to be hard against the worst team. But I do feel the concern, and as a JT owner, it's one of those situations where sometimes you're comfortable having the handcuff. I wouldn't even be comfortable having the handcuff because the guys behind them aren't really handcuffs. I mean, they are, but in a sense, they could be the guys that do better that week. And it literally comes down to how he starts the game sometimes. Does he fumble? Is he missing blocks? What is he doing? So I see the concern. He hasn't had a 10-point fantasy week PPR since week 6. Granted, week 7 he had a bye. So that's also a little bit concerning. But just to prove my point a little bit more, it's weird with these running backs because you would think Hines would be the pass-catching guy, but that's not really the case. I mean, Jonathan Taylor, in his past 5 games I'm seeing here, has had at least 2 catches in every game. So I literally think, just from looking at the stats and the snap percentages, that it's whoever has the hot hand there, and it's not anybody playing a specific role. I think the whole year, like Frank Reich has been saying, they're looking for their main guy that could do everything. And so far, none of them have proved that. Nyheim Hines has had struggled pass blocking. Wilkins has definitely kind of just been the third guy there, but even he's had his games this year where he just puts his head down and he gets yards. So I think it's the hot hand on that team. And I would be concerned, like you said, but this is not a week that I would probably sit him.
Yeah, a lot of great points there about JT. He's a little bit of a tough guy to figure out at this point in the season. And it's been hard to really kind of get a cumulative look at what he's done because it seems like a little bit of a roller coaster, and people are really down on him right now. So, all right, fellas. Well, we made it through all of our picks. So once again, to recap our sits, Kyle had Darrell Henderson this week. Mike has Travis Fulgham. I have AJ Brown, and Donte has Jonathan Taylor. And once more to go over the starts, Kyle has Damien Harris. Mike has Michael Pittman. I have Juju Smith-Schuster, and Donte has Jakobi Meyers. So, well, guys, those are our starts and sits for the week. Week 11, we got a lot of intriguing matchups this week. As we're recording right now, I've got my eyes on the Seattle and Arizona score. It looks like we already saw a big touchdown from DK Metcalf. But I'm looking ahead. There's some big matchups this week between Tennessee and Baltimore, even Houston and New England. There's some divisional ones, between the Saints and the Falcons here, and I even see a great matchup between the Packers and the Colts coming up later in the week, or later in the day on Sunday. So we're going to be looking forward to all those games, and you can bet that we'll be watching, and hopefully we'll have another great episode for you next week. So, fellas, anything?
Nothing from me.
Nothing from us. All right. Well, that's all we got, guys. We will see you next week for First Seed Sports. I'm Zach. See you guys later.